Oblivion, a game where you can be anything you want, but Todd Howard tries to make you a stealth archer. But today I say no. Today I decide my own destiny. Today I become the Goblin Shaman Staff enjoyer I was always meant to be. The objective is simple: beat the game with the Goblin Shaman Staff, but to spice it up, I'll also need to become the Archmage of the Mages Guild. Also, yes, I'm playing the remastered version. It is the objective best way to play the game. These are facts and I will argue with you in the comments. Just a little quick behind the scenes before we begin. Normally I don't research runs before doing them, I just think, hey, that sounds fun, and then roll with it. But in this case, I did actually look this up beforehand and saw that it had been done by a Bard's Ballad. Well, sorta. His video's objective is different than this one's, and it takes a much more in-depth look at the Goblin Shaman Staff. He's got a lot of cool experiment style videos on his channels, and they're super chill, so if that's a thing you like, make sure to check him out. If you do, comment, "You are a handsome fellow." He has no idea who I am, so he'll never figure out where it came from. Anyway, time for the intro to end and the run to begin. I decided to start as a Breton because I knew I would be taking on a lot of magically inclined enemies, so having the permanent 50% magic resistance buff would be at least somewhat helpful. Maybe I'm just imagining it, but does this default Breton face look kind of familiar to anyone? Whatever, I gave him blonde hair and named him Zap Brannigan because it was like 3 AM and this was the best my sleep-deprived brain could come up with, and with that, it's time to start. After being taunted for a while by Valen that I'll never get out of here, Uriel Septim and his blades show up to let me out of here, so take that, Valen, you stale piece of white bread. First order of business is to actually get my weapon. Thankfully, it is here in the tutorial. Not so thankfully, it is in the hands of a witch. Now, during planning, I did think to try and be as pure to the challenge as possible, only allowing myself to do damage with the staff, meaning I have to get it without actually attacking the witch. I do think this is possible, either using the Dark Elf's Ancestor Guardian ability, which will summon a ghost and hoping it kills the witch specifically, or everything I guess, or by freeing the rats in the arena and hoping they attack the witch, which might be slightly less random with the Wood Elf's Beast Tongue ability, I'm not sure. But in the end, I decided that those plans were for schoolgirls and that this idea has some chest hair. I literally just beat the shit out of the witch. Unlocked a new mage skill, these hands, baby! Once she fell, I looted my prize, the Goblin Shaman Staff, as well as the free-filled Petty Soul Gem. A couple of shots show some promising damage. It's not, this is a lie. This attack does 5 shock damage. Would you like to guess how much damage the basic shock spell that pretty much any magic wielder with more intelligence than a rock can use does? 10. This attack does half as much damage as the weakest shock spell. So yeah, this is gonna get real bad, real fast, but I do have an idea to alleviate my pain. First though, I have to get out of the tutorial sewer. I meet back up with Emperor Fancy Pants and tell him I am born under the sign of the mage for some extra magicka, and he realizes we aren't compatible, so we move on. Yeah, maybe I just let the blades carry this section. So, you wanna hang out tonight? Listen, you could've just said no. Emperor Uriel Septim is dead, but he tasked me with delivering the Amulet of Kings to Joffrey and to find his hidden heir. A task that seems important, so it's only fitting that I forget about it for the next few hours and do something else instead. Boris then assumes I'm a bard, and I guess that's what he thought after I told him I fisted that goblin witch to death. But he's wrong, so I make a custom class that specializes in magic, favoring willpower and endurance for the +5 boost each, and pick the major skills: illusion, light armor, mercantile, mysticism, restoration, sneak, and destruction. I know this class is kinda all over the place, but there is a method to my madness, I swear. To be fair, sneak and light armor don't get as much use as I thought they would, but everything else is pretty vital to the run in one way or another. After making my escape from the sewers, I head straight to Rindir's staff to confirm that in the remaster he still does not sell soul gems for some stupid reason. Calendil over at the Mystic Emporium does, so I sell a lot of stuff I picked up and buy 4 to get myself started. But even an infinite amount of soul gems are useless without a way to confine the very life force of a being to them, so over in Anvil's Mages Guild I talked to Theron, who can teach me the basic soul trap spell. But it's kind of expensive, coming in at 272 gold, and I'm just a tiny bit short. Now, at first I was prepared to deep dive into some dungeons, sneaking past all the enemies, hoping to steal some loot, which is the reason I took sneak in the first place, but then I thought, why dive into dungeons when I can just dive underwater and die? Oh, wait, no, that's not right. Let me try that again. Dive underwater and die. God damn it. Dive underwater and grab Fingleam, an enchanted glass helmet. I quickly head back to the Mystic Emporium and sell it to Calendil for a bit of gold, then return to Theron and buy his soul trap spell. Now I'm ready to begin my adventure proper. Well, almost. I actually need to capture some souls first, I guess. While I'm here, I also talk to Cara Hill about joining the Mages Guild. She tells me as long as I'm not a wanted criminal, the guild will welcome me in. In order to gain access to the Arcane University, though, I must get recommendations from every guild hall in Cyrodiil. I ask her about her task, and she tells me that there have been some killings on the road and I am to meet up with 2 battle mages to see what's happening. Well, that sounds like there will be some fighting, so first it's off to gather some souls. Foul creature, your very life force will be forfeit. Suffer now, trapped in a crystal for all eternity. Jokes aside, I want to emphasize that this took 2 blasts of lightning to kill a single mud crab. That's not good. Not only does it show how little damage I'm going to be doing to things that are an actual threat, but it means I have to use 2 of my limited casts to actually fill a soul gem. The good news, if you could call it that, is that even the pettiest souls can fully charge this staff. That means even if the game world is at level 9 billion, I can still kill a single mud crab and get a full charge. Besides, at that point I'd probably have other problems to worry about anyway. Right, after capturing a couple more crabbies to rival Gary Oaks, I decide I might as well take care of that rogue mage. So over at the Bruna Cross Inn, I meet up with Ariella, who tells me to rent a room, and if anyone asks, say I'm a merchant. I then loudly proclaim to the innkeep that I am a traveling merchant, and then this totally not evil looking high elf named Chlamydia What? I then loudly proclaim to the innkeep that I am a traveling merchant, and this totally not evil looking high elf named Kamandala asked me if I was a merchant. I mean, you have ears, right? Little sus, but hey, if she's got coin, Todd Howard has wares. Anyway, I sit in my room for about 12 seconds before Ariella shows up to tell me the plan. Basically, I walk down the street and get mugged. Ariella, I gotta say, I'm not a huge fan of this plan. I, don't remember her hiding place being that bad. Gasp, shock, upset, Kamandala is the murderer, wow, oh, I'm so surprised. So anyway, she takes a fireball from Ariella and it takes care of my problem. With that, I return to the Anvil Mages Guild and ransack the place for loose soul gems, something I will repeat for all of the guild halls going forward. I then tell Cara Hill about the dead rogue mage to secure my recommendation and move on. Next, over in Bravil, Kud-E assumed I was here for a recommendation before I even said anything, giving credence to the fact that the mages are in fact magical. My task now is to get Ardaline's mage staff back, and it was taken by one Varen Vamori. Speaking with Mr. Vamori, it seems he took the staff because he liked her, and listen bro, I get it, having a crush makes you do crazy things. Heck, one time in elementary school I liked this girl, so I tried to impress her by jumping to the 4th monkey bar on the jungle gym, only to miss, land on my back, and start crying like a baby. She was not impressed. My point is that theft is not how you get girls' attention. Anyway, after asking about the staff, he says he sold it. So I see Cupid didn't hit you with an arrow, he dropped a rock on your head.
Tell Ardaline I'm sorry.
What? No, you do that. Man really doesn't understand anything. The staff was sold to Soris Arnim, who, despite understanding the situation, wants me to buy it back from him for 200 gold. Which I could do, I've got the money for. But I'm not paying for someone else's mistake, so no. I happen to know that it is stored in a chest in his basement, so I ever so carefully nudge him out of line of sight of the door, pick my way in, and pick the chest. What? It's not stealing, the staff doesn't even belong to him. I'm going to give it back to its original owner. Returning to Kud-E, I deliver the staff and secure my recommendation. Next stop is Leyawiin, and my task this time is to retrieve a Seer's Stone for the guild branch head. Without it, she can't really function, question mark? Well, as it turns out, Kalthar took it and hid it, but thankfully he let slip about Dagil's father somehow being connected. Speaking to Dagil, she cryptically tells us where we need to go. Thankfully, this isn't Morrowind, so I don't have to understand her riddle. The game simply says, go to Fort Blueblood. And where there's a fort, there's things to murder. This early on, enemies don't have a lot of health, but because of how little damage I do, racial passive like this Orc Marauder's 25% magic resistance really slowed down being able to handle enemies, and obviously as I level, things will get more health, so this will become worse and worse. But since I came stocked with a bunch of filled soul gems, it's fine, though the dungeon boss also being an orc kinda sucked. Near the amulet are a couple of imps that so kindly let me capture their soul, then I grab that amulet, and when I attempt to leave, I'm stopped by Kalthar. So it turns out he took the other one because he was upset she outranks him and he views her as incompetent for the role, something we will see again shortly. He states he would give it back to her after he got what he wanted, but despite saying that, he immediately attacks us and gets the shock of his life. Maybe should have worked on some defensive magic, but what do I know? I then return the stone, securing my 3rd recommendation letter. Then I spend a little time wandering the shoreline and snaring the everlasting soul of innocent creatures, as I know at least one more recommendation quest has combat, plus the multitude of quests beyond it that will. After enslaving enough crabs to put the local fish markets out of business and selling off the spoils of war from that last dungeon crawl, I head over to Coral for my next task. This time, Tikas wants me to see why one Arana is in town. The two don't really see eye to eye, and so I need to figure out what she's after and how to get rid of her. Speaking with her reveals she is after a legendary book, Fingers of the Mountain, and she has reason to believe it is nearby the city. I return to Tikas and tell him what she is after, and he instructs me to obtain the book and return it to him for safekeeping within the guild. The book itself is nearby, and by nearby, I mean in a ruin literally less than 5 minutes from the city gates. I don't understand why she couldn't just go there and get it herself, especially considering it's supposed to be a powerful spell, or rather allow you to access a powerful spell, which, spoiler alert, it's kind of a shitty spell, but that is neither here nor there. Anyway, I retrieve the book and return it to Tikis. There is actually more to this quest, but this is sufficient for requiring my recommendation, so I don't care. At this point, I get my first level up and put 5 points into Int for more Magicka, Endurance for more health, and the leftovers in the Willpower for Magicka regen. Next up is Bruma, and this time around I need to find a missing mage by the name of Jaskar. Now, there are actually a few fun things you can do with this quest, however, for this playthrough I was just going to do it the way the quest log told me to, so I need to speak with the mages around and see if they know anything. Volinaro is actually the specific mage to talk to, and asking him about Jaskar, he seems to not be telling us everything he knows. I had some leftover charm scrolls from the Bravil recommendation, so I cast Smooth Talk on him, and he tells me that if I want to find Jaskar, he can help, I just need to do something for him first. Turns out, he too is not super thrilled with his superior's position and wants me to pull a prank on her. Basically, he wants me to steal her manual of spellcraft from her desk, he even teaches me a spell to unlock it. Which, unfortunately, I don't have the skill to cast, but I can cast Lockpick, so it's fine. I think he's trying to get a promotion in a different way. Anyway, standing definitely in earshot of Jean, I give him the book and he tells me to meet him in the living quarters after 10 PM. As it turns out, Jaskar was never actually missing, Volinaro just turned him invisible. Fun fact for all of you out there, Volinaro has to recast this spell once a day, and you can actually get hit by it if you stand in the way, causing you to have 100% Chameleon for 24 in-game hours. And yes, it is as busted as it sounds, and it still works in the remaster. I tell Jean I found Jaskar, she's annoyed she misplaced her book, but still hands over the recommendation. I then head to Cheydinhal for my next task, where Falcar tells me he was testing a Ring of Burden, but another associate misplaced it. He believes the associate threw it down a well out back, but it's locked, so I need to talk to Ditsan to get a key. When I tell her the task I was given, she expresses concern, but won't say more until Falcar is out of earshot as he is the ranking member. Waiting until he's asleep in his chambers, she's actually worried something bad happened to the other associate, Vidkun, and thinks there might be a connection between this task and his disappearance. She gives me the key, as well as a feather plus water breathing spell that I can't cast. I jump into the flooded well to find the body of Vidkun, and on him the Ring of Burden, a literally worthless ring that weighs as much as a neutron star. Obviously, the ring over-encumbers me as I am weak nudity arm mage, but I can thankfully still drag my ass back to the guild hall. Upon return, Ditsan tells me she confronted Falcar after I left, and he apparently flew into a rage, screaming and ranting that everyone's days are numbered before storming out, likely having not written my recommendation. She then tells me to go check his living quarters for it and for anything suspicious. In the corner of his room is a locked dresser, and after picking it open, I find a couple of black soul gems. And listen, I'm sure these are like important and evil and whatnot, but can I keep them? For crabs, of course. Yes, crabs. I tell Ditsan about what I found, and unfortunately she takes these soul gems from me, but assures me that this evidence plus her word will be enough to get my recommendation. Final stop, Skingrad, best city in the game. Before I enter the Mage's Hall though, I want to show you all a little silly game I've played ever since starting the original version of Oblivion in my high school days. Basically, my first time in the city, I like to play keep away from Glarthir. It's dumb, I know, but it's kind of fun to feel like I'm running away from the world's shittiest hunter. I am asked to find one Earthor. Adorine needs to consult him about some notes of his, but can't be bothered to locate him herself. She suggests I ask my fellow mages about his whereabouts. Silenus tells me he practices magic in Bleakflat's cave and used to check in twice a week, but recently he hasn't, causing concern. As you'd expect, sending him there was Adorine's idea, but of course she just expects me to go check on him and provides a fireball spell in order to defend myself if necessary. Guess she doesn't see the goblin head on a stick I'm packing, which isn't a euphemism, YouTube, I swear. Bleakflat's cave is home to many deranged zombies, which I believe are a special variant found only during this quest. They take a number of hits to bring down, but thankfully I can soul trap them with the gems I have in my inventory. At one point, while I was fighting, a helpful NPC jumped from the shadows to clobber a zombie. I mean, I had it handled, but I'm happy to save the Cass. Turns out that NPC was Earthor, the very mage I was looking for. To be honest, I didn't remember that he was alive, so I was honestly shocked, pun intended, that he was there. Together we head back to Skingrad, where Adorine is honestly kinda cold to him. I almost feel bad for the poor guy. At any rate, this is enough to secure my final recommendation letter, meaning I can now head to the Arcane University and speak with Raminus Polis about properly joining the Mages Guild. In doing so, I am granted access to the university grounds and awarded the rank of Apprentice. Before I can get started running real tasks for the university, Raminus tells me I'll need a staff. He needs some eyeballs because I already have one, but hey. I need to travel to Wellspring Cave just northeast of the Imperial City to find the special wood that is used to make my special staff. Before that though, I ransack all the buildings for loose soul gems, and then I head over to the Mystic Emporium to buy Weakness to Magicka. I'm not able to cast it just yet, but I am able to cast Weakness to Shock, which I buy from Silenus back in Skingrad. And now, it's time. If you've only played Skyrim, you better buckle up because I'm about to blow your mind. In the Praxographical Center is a particularly useful altar, the Altar of Spellcraft. What does it do? Well, as long as you are able to cast the spell that you own, you are able to craft your own custom spells. For example, if I own the basic Fire and Frost spell, I can then craft a single spell that would apply both damage types. Or, more pertinent to my situation, a 100% weakness to Shock for 5 seconds with a Soul Trap for 5 seconds on top of it. I'll be crafting a number of spells as the run progresses, but this is only the tip of the iceberg. In theory, a 100% weakness to Shock should double my damage from 5 to 10, and Mudcrabs only have 10 health, but it still takes 2 hits to kill them. I'm not sure why, maybe a floating point number rounded down or something in the damage calculation. It doesn't really matter though, as this is effectively doubling my damage output when fighting normal enemies. I do need 50 in destruction to cast weakness to Magicka, so I craft another spell that does a very minor amount of burn damage to myself. This actually isn't the most effective way to cheese getting levels, but as it's just something to cast while I'm standing around waiting or walking from place to place, it doesn't really matter. I then finally travel to Wellspring Cave, where inside I find the dead body of Zarasha and nearby a necromancer. So, fighting necromancers, which are pretty much the primary enemy type for the Mages Guild, kinda suck. They tend to summon things immediately, run away, and heal a lot. Couple that with any racial resistances to shock damage and I'm in for a bad time. Regardless, I fight my way through the cave before emerging in a grove and being taunted by a necromancer named Noveni. But they, and the other necromancers that were nearby who didn't aggro for some reason, are no match for my shocking stick. I pick up my unfinished staff, then return to Romanus to tell him what's happened. He instructs me to seek out Delmar about my staff while he speaks with the council about the necromancers. Delmar tells me he can craft a staff that embodies one of 3 magical schools: destruction, illusion, or mysticism. Then within that school there are 3 choices. In the end, I went with illusion's paralysis. I don't know if I'll have need of it in the end, but as it is right this second, I am unable to cast any paralysis spells, so that, plus the fact that per my rules the only other useful thing that I could take is Soul Trap, but I can cast that, so I don't want it. I then sleep for 24 hours and put my level up points into intelligence, willpower, and endurance. I retrieve my Staff of Paralysis, then stand around in the Archmage lobby lighting myself on fire while waiting for Romanus. I am then advanced in rank and told my next task is to retrieve a book that was lent to Count Hasseldor in Skingrad. Romanus also cautions me that Skingrad is an unusual place. I don't know what he means by that. In the castle, Mercator, the Count's advisor, tells me that the Count is a busy man and won't entertain me. He also insults me because I've got this awesome staff and he doesn't, probably, but after that he says he will do his best to change the Count's mind and that I should return the following day. I then stand perfectly still inside the castle for 24 hours as any sane mage would, and Mercator informs me that the Count will see me. Not here though. No, instead I am to meet him just south of the Cursed Mine outside of town at 2 AM. That's not suspicious at all. Turns out, Mercator's a liar. He just wanted to jump me, presumably for my big-headed staff. Joke's on him though, the Count shows up and together we cast Lifeint on him and his 2 buddies. So it turns out the council was worried Hasseldor had joined up with the necromancers, but he assures us he would never do such a thing. Also, the Count is a vampire. I didn't know the whole seeing a vampire makes your blood run cold thing was real. I returned to Romanus, who basically said he never wanted to mislead me, and the council declared it unnecessary to disclose the true nature of the quest to me for various reasons. Typical upper management things, honestly. I am then promoted to Evoker and given an amulet for my troubles, as well as my next task. This time around, I am to go to an alien ruin and help a research project. Arlov is in command of it, so I should speak with him about the details. The Spell Drinker amulet I was given has spell absorption on self for 9 points, useful to some degree. Or...
You're about Vatican, are you?
No sir, my soul is far beyond saving at this point, thanks though. Erlov tells me his research was halted because of a blocked passage or something, and that I should look into it. He then gives me a key to get in and sends me on my way. I take a nice walk through the countryside, setting myself on fire like any normal mage does before arriving on site. Skalil, who is less than thrilled we are here and not Erlov, tells us the issue is that they have found a magical pillar. It reacts to, well, magic, but every spell the mages have thrown at it, it will respond with hostility, zapping them back with electricity. After some back and forth, I get a book from Skalil with some translations, then I can ask Dinal about the carvings in the room. Long story short, those carvings hint at 4 kinds of magical spells: Fire, Frost, Damage Magicka, and Fortify Magicka. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wow, Doom, I sure hope you prepared for this. No, I did not. A normal mage playthrough would likely see the player having 2 or maybe even 3 of these spells, but I had 1, Flare. Thankfully, there is a nearby chest that has a bunch of scrolls in it, and wouldn't you know, all 4 effects can be found here. Now, these spells do actually need to be cast in a specific order. I don't know if there is a way to tell what that order is, but due to the nature of scrolls in this game, it means I only had 1 shot to do this. Or it would if I didn't have the power of space-time manipulation on my side. After a couple of attempts, I find the right order and the pillars separate, revealing a doorway leading further into the ruin. Inside are some basic ghosts that are waiting to be ensnared. And after wading through enough bones and ectoplasm to make any R34 artist blush, I arrive in the main chamber and take the ancient elven helm. I return said helm to Arlov, who was pleased with me bringing an end to this assignment. Raminus now asks me to speak with Tarmina, the local specialist on Magica Arcana, about Black Soul Gems specifically. Also, I'm promoted to the rank of Conjurer and given some cool new rows. Before proceeding, however, I need to re-up my supply. I make a quick stop in Bravil to buy Debilitate, a paralyze for 3 seconds spell that will be used later. Quickly, I take a power nap to level up and I pump the same stats as before, then speak with Tarmina about the Black Soul Gems. She tells me about a book called Necromancer's Moon and that it might contain more information about them and that I should seek it out. She then hints that Falcar, the disgruntled mage from the recommendation quest, might have not returned it yet, which I thought meant I'd have to go get it. Nope, it's just on a nightstand on campus. Alright then. I then hand the book over to Raminus and we discuss its pages. He notes a passage discussing something called the Shade of the Revenant and believes it to be a celestial phenomenon, then instructs me to talk to Bothiel as she knows a lot about astrology. And she's like the best kind of Virgo, so she super helped me out. She explains that Falcar was here asking about it as well and he had a stack of papers. Conveniently, he dropped one. It's a list of sites with a cryptic message stating once a week his grace shines down on us. Of them, Raminus knows of the Dark Fissure and tells me it's in the mountains just south of Cheydinhal, so I go there and see if I can learn anything. I do happen to remember this quest, so I perched on top of a nearby rock and waited until I saw the Necromancer create a Black Soul Gem, then talked to him before he has a chance to fight me for fun, I guess. But partway through the squabble, I had an idea. What if I just... What? It's better that I have the evil soul inside the evil soul gem instead of the enemy, right? I return to Raminus to tell him what I saw and he promotes me to Magician, so I guess I can perform card tricks at the annual dinner now. Next, I speak directly with Archmage Traven, who tells me the Council has a mole inside the necromancy cult, but communications have gone dark. The Council assumes he's either a traitor or dead and sent some battle mages to check on him. Traven is worried that the mages might mistake Musianis for an actual enemy and mistreat him, so is sending me to intercept them so that doesn't happen and to confirm his safety. Upon arriving at the ruin, I find a lone battle mage who tells me they were ambushed and the others were dragged off while he was able to escape. He then rushes off to save them. I tried to get this zombie to follow a similar fate to the battle mage a few seconds ago, but it proved rather difficult, so I just fought him the old-fashioned way. Eventually, I happened upon Mariette, who informs me that Musianis is a worm thrall, whatever that means, and that I will be next. We then engage in magical combat, and she is a tiny bit more resistance to electrical impulses, but after a couple dozen blasts, she too is shocked into oblivion. A couple of chambers over, I find Musianis, who has been turned into an average college student. There's nothing I can do for him now, so I return to the university. I am awarded the rank of Warlock, otherwise known as the best class in World of Warcraft, and told my next task is to travel to Skingrad. It seems Count Hasseldor has vital information for the guild and personally requested I be the one to retrieve it. While I wait for the Count, I make sure to demonstrate that I am of totally sound and reasonable mind by sprinting around his entrance hall, constantly lighting myself on fire until I'm within an inch of my life. Before Hasseldor tells me of his vitally important information, he himself has a task for me. It seems there is a nest of vampires outside of town that need to be taken care of. Additionally, it has attracted vampire hunters, who he also wishes for me to drive from town. He does not care how either goal is achieved. Now, as you can imagine, vampires and vampire hunters are not exactly allied forces. So, while there are several ways to handle this quest, I decided to approach Eredor and inform him of the vampire lair. Then, that night just after dusk, the vampire hunters storm the cave and do my fighting for me. In the end, Team Vamp won out, even with me helping out the hunters a bit, but I think that happened just because they were outnumbered 2-1. Either way, I cleaned up the remaining vampires, no issue. I did contract the vampire disease, but a quick trip to the chapel takes care of that. I return to the Count, who is pleased with my work and finally tells me what he knows, that Mannimarco has returned. Now, if that name means nothing to you, don't worry, it didn't mean anything to me either. If you read a little bit of lore about him, he is apparently an incredibly ancient and evil necromancer of unimaginable power. So I'ma go zap him with my stick. I return to Traven with my news, and he is as alarmed as someone who recognizes the name should be, and essentially tells me he will consult the council and to return sometime later. Using this small break for some self-reflection, and by that I mean self-immolation, I realize I never noticed all the buildings on campus have a second floor, which means I can pocket a few more loose soul gems. I also take this time to create an improved skin singe spell, which will allow me to more rapidly level destruction. Eventually, after cauterizing my whole body, I hit 50. Thus, it's off to the spell-making altar again to craft multiple spells that have a combination of weakness to shock, magicka, and soul trap. After much waiting, Traven tells me the council is in disarray about what to do in regards to the King of Worms' return. Yes, Mannimarco is called the King of Worms. Yes, it's a fitting, albeit silly name. No, I don't know why he didn't call himself something cooler. Anyway, Traven goes on to explain that he hasn't heard from Jean up in the Bruma Mages Guild in quite some time, which is unusual, so he wishes for me to go make sure everything is okay. Upon arrival, it's not. The guild hall is up in flames and several members are dead while skeleton guardians stomp around their dead bodies. This is the first time I came close to dying due to a high number of enemies with nowhere to back up to. Good thing I've been stockpiling healing potions since the beginning of the game. Though, to avoid using a large number of them on an otherwise trivial matter, I ended up backing out into the streets of Bruma and getting some local help. Sir? You know we're in the middle of a burning building, right? With some unexpected assistance from Tolgan, don't worry, he's just sleeping. No, actually, I clear out the skeletons. Huh. Me, a necromancer, a dead body, and a silent hidden watcher. Sounds like a good time. After Camilla forgets the safe word, Jaskar reveals himself and talks about what happened. Essentially, Mannimarco paid a visit to the guild hall and now there's no more guild hall. Jaskar does make an alarming statement that it almost looked like Mannimarco sucked Volanaro's soul out, which, listen, I already made one R18 joke a few seconds ago, I'm not doing it again. I return to Traven and deliver the terrible news. He says he and the council will need time to digest this information, which is a lie. I pop over to Raminus to be ranked up to wizard, then immediately return. I guess, to be fair, maybe murderous threat to the whole world is a pretty easy thing to understand. Anyway, it seems that the council has fractured and two individuals, Arlov and Karanya, have taken a couple of powerful artifacts and fled the capital. The first I decide to track down is the Necromancer's Amulet, which was taken by Karanya to Fort Ontis. Upon arrival, there are friendly mages inside, but the atmosphere seems off. Yeah, I don't have a good feeling about this. Speaking with Karanya, surprise, she's sided with the Necromancers. Fighting ensues and she's weirdly resistant to my attacks, but as it is a one-on-one, I'm not in any real danger. I take the amulet off her body, then of course need to fight my way out of the fort. This isn't particularly difficult as most of the mages are isolated and thus easy to pick off. Before heading for the helm, I make a more powerful light spell, then spend some time getting my illusion to 50. At first, I tried to craft a spell with 2-second paralysis and 5 seconds of my debuffs, but that ended up needing level 75 illusion. So I made a second spell that is 1 second paralysis and 2 seconds for my debuffs. That might seem really short, but due to the way the game handles paralyzed enemies, it's still 2 or 3 seconds total that they are taken out of the fight. Anyway, next I must track down the Bloodworm Helm taken by Arlov to Fort Telemann. It's filled with necromancers! Shocker! Pun intended. Halfway through the fort though, creatures from the plane of Oblivion suddenly come to my aid. Well, not really, it was more of an enemy of my enemy thing, and they turn on me as soon as the necromancers were dealt with, but still. This doesn't really change anything, but does have the nice bonus of allowing me to get some more charges into soul gems. And at the end, I find a Dromora standing over the dead Arlov, and after dispatching him, I'm able to take the Bloodworm Helm off Arlov's still warm body. I then return both the amulet and helm to the university for safekeeping. Honestly, the enchantments weren't that powerful, so I don't know what the council was worried about. At this point, I am promoted to Master Wizard and Traven has his next task for me. The local necromancers have been busy creating black soul gems and there is one in particular that needs to be confiscated. Honestly, if I had my way, I would take all of them for research purposes, of course. Arriving on site, there are 3 battle mages waiting. They are unable to get into the ruin as there is an enchantment on the door, but they wager the enemy will emerge soon. I am then able to place each mage in either a melee or ranged position and I pick the ones that best suit their abilities. After a couple of minutes, a few necromancers and our old buddy Falcar emerge from the ruin. Now, had I been thinking, I would have tried to blast him with my Staff of Paralysis from range, then close the distance and finish him off. However, as with all my runs, I was not thinking. He manages to escape back into the ruin and I chase after him. The dungeon is large and packed with necromancers and loot. At one point, I even left to sell some spoils and attempt to resupply my own wares.
By the way, do you happen to know what the fine is here in Cyrodiil for necrophilia?
I can get murdered and laid? Must be my birthday. Back in the dungeon, I fight my way all the way to Falcar, who is very resistant to my shocking stick, but he is having some trouble standing up, and after like 37 lightning bolts to the gonads, he expires, same though. From him, I take the colossal black soul gem, then return it to Traven, who says my next task is the most important thus far. He states that the soul gem was meant for his own soul, and that with it in Mannimarco's possession, he would have marched on the university and overthrown it. Traven then explains that Mannimarco will have the gem, but it will be his undoing. With the gem in my possession, I will be immune to Mannimarco's enthrall spell, and then I must take him out. I sure hope you left a note, because like, there's no one else in this room, so I head north until I arrive at Echo Cave.
I hold the key. And I will die defending it.
Suit yourself. Most of the fighting in here is tedious as I'm starting to reach levels where more difficult mobs spawn, not helped at all when necromancers heal from death to nearly full health. You know what does help though? when I made a discovery so earth-shatteringly broken, it fundamentally changed how I will play this game forever. Let me just show you this clip and tell me if you can figure it out. The debuff stack. Additively, specifically, I don't know if it works if you cast the same spell, that might just refresh the debuff timer, but if you have two spells, even if the effects are identical, as long as it is two different spells, then the effects stack. It's not limited to two either, that's just for this example. And I didn't realize the horrifying power I had just unlocked until a little later, but this, as you can imagine, is fucking broken. Okay, here, for example, I don't generally like to show footage from later in the run because narrative, but just watch this. Ogres, you know those things that are really, really tanky and usually pretty annoying to take down? Their health is apparently 26 times whatever your character level is, and at this point I think I was 15, which would be 390 health. My 5 shock damage staff one-tapped it. The reign of Zap Brannigan begins! Well, not quite yet, I still hadn't fully realized the absolute destruction I could bring, but soon. I confront Mannimarco, who, you know, bad guy talks and gonna destroy the guild, blah 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 blah. I got him monologuing, but I didn't save him and the, quote, near invincible, end quote, necromancer has met his end. I returned to reminisce with news of my victory, and it seems previous Archmage, now Pile of Ash Traven, did in fact leave a note about what he was doing, so I am crowned the new Archmage. Originally, I was planning on making a joke, the least proficient magical user with the weakest staff is now the leader of the Arcane University, but given recent discoveries, that is no longer the case. I am gifted the Archmage robes, and at first I was disappointed these weren't enchanted at all, and honestly, I think it would have been better if they were by default, but I guess the game wants us to enchant them ourselves how we see fit, which I do a bit later. Everyone is so happy the Arcane University is free of necromancers, but I wouldn't say free, more like under new management. But that'll have to wait, because I guess it's finally time to get around to, you know, saving the world from the Hell Invasion and all. I deliver the amulet to Brother Joffrey, who is amazed I have it at all, and in hindsight, yeah, kinda me too at this point, and he tells me that the Emperor had a secret child that is now a priest in the nearby town of Kvatch. Unfortunately, it's not as easy as go and get him, as it would seem sometime within the past, like a couple of months at this point, the town was attacked, destroyed, and there is currently a gate to Oblivion outside its walls. Inside, I find a lone soldier fending off the demons of hell, and honestly, this guy needs to be made a Knight Sentinel right now. I convince him to come with me just so he can see his mission through, and together we set off for the looming tower in the distance. On our way there, we fought through all sorts of demonic creatures like Bethesda jank, and the one mistake I'm happy to make again. Eventually, we fight our way to a captive soldier, Minion, who tells us the sigil key is the key that keeps the gate open. Remove it, and the whole thing comes crumbling down. After making it to the top, Illind and I pull the big red ball so hard there is a cataclysmic eruption and the gate collapses. Together with Matthias in the waking world, we storm the ruins of Kvatch, putting down any danger in our path until we've carved our way to the chapel. Inside is Martin, who doesn't believe that he is the Emperor's son until one dialogue option later where he suddenly believes me, and I just... Listen, I love this game, but imagine somebody walked up to you and said, "Hey, your uncle is the Prince of Nigeria," or something like that. You tell him to snuff it. Hold on, I need to check my email real fast. Together with Martin McGullible, we return to Waynon Priory, which is now under attack by the Mythic Dawn. In the chapel, I watch 2 monks and a priest beat the ever-living shit out of the assassins, then Joffrey tells me the amulet was taken, and like, what do you mean it was taken? I had that thing in my back pocket as I fought through hordes of the undead and became the Archmage of the University. Then I give it to you, and 6 hours later, it's stolen? Better carry Martin with me everywhere I go, liable to die otherwise. Together, we set off for Cloud Ruler Temple. Joffrey is convinced Martin will be safe there, I'm skeptical, but unable to change his fate, so here we are. After a short speech from Martin, Joffrey suggests I seek out Boris and see if he's learned anything about the assassins. I find him at Luther Broad's boarding house over in the Elven Garden District, and he tells me that the man in the corner is going to follow him, and that I should follow that man like some crazy conga line of probable death. Sure enough, in the basement the assassin reveals himself, but he is no match for being paralyzed and then shocked to death. On his body is a book that Boris believes to be important, so I should take it to Tarmina over at the Arcane University, not an issue considering I'm her boss. She tells me that there are 4 volumes to this book, but she's only ever seen the first 2. She's kind enough to give me the library's copy of the second volume, which, I'm the Archmage, that means this is mine. Tarmina, if you're trying to get an advancement in the guild, that's not how you do it. Instead, I would like to point you to a different book about a certain Argonian maid. She then sends me to Fintius at the first edition, who tells me that the first 2 books are rare, but the 3rd and 4th are, and I quote here, impossible to find, before immediately telling me he has a copy of the 3rd volume. There are several ways to get it, but the easiest of them, or rather the one that involves no skill use, is to simply confront the book's owner, Gwynnis, and tell him that he's attempting to join a death god murder cult. He, understandably, bitches out of the decision and also informs us that the only way to get the 4th volume is by receiving it directly from a member of the cult. Thankfully, he had a meeting set up to do just that, which he also turns that information over to us. At this point, I finally did something with that screaming necromancer soul in my pocket, and I used it to enchant a silver necklace to give myself 10% shield. Then I finally take my level up, maxing out my intelligence, but I leave willpower at 99 to avoid wasting some points. The remainder will go into endurance and speed. Meeting back up with Boris, he tells me the meeting place is in the sewers, and he knows it well, which sounds weird, but he assures me that is because the blades use them to move around the city undetected. Together, we fought our way through mud crabs and rats that stood absolutely no chance until we arrive at the meeting place. I tell him I'll confront the sponsor, but for some reason, he's just angry immediately. I mean, it doesn't matter at all. Despite accidentally casting on Boris, Raven still drops in just a couple of blasts. Doing a fancy dance isn't gonna save you, bro. I return all the books to Tarmina, who is interested in solving the puzzle. Unfortunately for her, I have meta-knowledge, so I just know where to go. First though, I get another level, maxing out willpower and dumping the rest into endurance and speed. Then I make another weakness spell, but this one lasts for 10 seconds, which is intended to allow me to have plenty of time to kill whatever I'm fighting. That being said, 10 seconds is about 9 seconds longer than most things survive. I also made a long paralysis spell, but it costs a lot of magicka, so I just keep it in my back pocket for rainy days. Now I stand ever so patiently in front of the grave that very clearly has a map on it, but for some reason is not readable until midday when the sun magics the lines to reveal the location. In Lake Aris Cavern, I tell the Mythic Dawn Doorman that I am the one who knocks and begin my electrifying assault on the hideout. I do, perhaps smartly, pause in the Grand Hall where Cameron is giving his speech. Individually, none of those cult members stood a chance, but taking on 6 of them at once? Sure, I can probably most definitely wipe the floor with 2 or maybe 3 before my mana runs dry, then just chug some potions, but I would be being pelted by attacks that whole time, so better to just wait. After everyone had left, I jumped down and absolutely obliterate Ruma in a couple of blasts, as well as her guard, free Jilius cause I'm not a monster, and grab the book to make my escape. After a haze of blood and destruction, I return to Martin with the Book of the Dam, I mean the Mysterium Xarxes. He tells me he will work on deciphering it and that I should talk to Joffrey in the meantime about some spies in Bruma. Doing so, I eventually learn that there have been sightings of strangers near the Runestone by Cloud Ruler Temple. Despite it being in archery range, the blades are not able to attack, which I suppose without complete confirmation that they're spies is probably a good thing. However, as soon as I show up, the allegations are proven true and it goes about as well as you'd expect for the spy. Now, there is a proper way to do this, but I decided instead to just break into Gerald's house where she is sleeping to just take her out immediately, but then a guard showed up? An investigator guard, which I had never seen before? He helped me with Gerald, but I was trespassing, so he still fined me. You know, there can't be any crime if there's no witness. No, this is a morally correct character. After paying my 40 gold fine, I speak to Bird, who gives me legal permission to investigate Gerald's house, where I of course find the hidden basement with the battle plans in them. I deliver these to Joffrey, who tells me I should speak with Martin as he has made some progress. Martin tells me he will need 4 items to open the portal to paradise. So far, he's learned of the first, which is the blood of a Daedra Lord. Unfortunately, we can't just stab a Daedra Lord, but the good news is that their blood is manifested in their artifacts. Translation, we just need to bring him a Daedric artifact. The game points you towards Azura's Star, which I opted to do. In hindsight, however, this was kinda stupid. Azura's Star is an infinite use soul gem. With a build like this, you would think it would be really useful, and maybe, but honestly I had more soul gems than hairs on my luscious head at this point, so it wasn't really necessary. First though, I take some time to enchant my hood and robe with shield, bringing me up to a nice 45% physical damage resistance. To begin the Azura Star quest, an offering of glow dust must be made at dawn or dusk. I opted for dawn in the event I'd had to lead the enemies outside for help. Spoilers, that didn't happen. Anyway, Azura tells me that some of her loyal followers have been turned into vampires and she wishes for them to be put down, laid to rest. Job's done, give rock. Job's done, take rock. Moving on, it would seem the Mythic Dawn had begun to make their move. They have opened an Oblivion gate outside of Bruma's walls. I am to rendezvous with Captain Bird and teach him how to deal with these fiery portals. One little touch of world building that I like is that Bird actually calls out 2 of the guards by name, but for us they're all just called Bruma Guard. I don't know, I always thought it was a neat little thing. Anyway, together we fight our way through the forces of Oblivion, stopping not for a moment to rest, for any second could spell our last. Well, their last. I'm kinda invincible at this point. I actually managed to keep all 3 of them alive the whole time, which I'm not sure I've ever done. Sure, Bird was knocked unconscious a couple of times, but it still counts. Together we rub our hands all over the big ball until there is an explosion. I then return to Joffrey to tell him the good news, and he rewards me with the Allies for Bruma quest. You know, the shittiest quest in the whole game. Thankfully, it's optional, so no. Martin, on the other hand, has something more exciting for me. I must track down the blood of a god. Okay, as cool as that is, how though? He goes on to explain that the gods do not manifest themselves on the mortal plane like the Daedra do, so there are no artifacts. However, Joffrey had a genius idea to use the blood of Tiber Septim, who ascended to godhood. Yeah, that'll probably work. So I'm off to Sancre Tor, a once holy place now desecrated by evil. At this point, nothing really concerns me except 3 enemy types. Ones that can silence me, like these fated wraiths, ones that have spell, reflect, or absorption abilities, and things immune to shock damage. So these fuckers. Behold, one of the mightiest warriors for the blades, cursed with undead. Until now, as he is super dead. Did you know you can paralyze the wraiths? Yeah, me neither. It also works on the ghost, which I was sure you couldn't do this. It's especially fun when they do whatever this is. Anyway, the goal here is to track down the 4 undead spirits and murder them so their souls can be free. They're just lucky I'm not packing any soul gems. Once that's done, they are able to, ghost energy this barrier down, allowing me access to the armor of Tiber Septim. I take it back to Martin, who is like, wow, cool, old man blood, thanks, and then tells me I need another magical rock. This one specifically is a Great Welkin stone that can only be found in one ruin, Miscargant. Before departing, I decided to stop wearing my shitty leather boots that break literally every single time I get hit and instead wear some gold-trimmed shoes. The benefit of doing this is now my spell effectiveness is 100% instead of 94, which probably helps. I'm not really sure how that affects the stacking of debuffs. Oh, I also enchant them and my wrist irons with +9 shield, bringing me up to a total of 63% physical damage reduction. With that, it's off to Miscargant. Mother Nature herself thought to try and stand in my way, but I am become Death, Destroyer of Worlds. The ruin itself is overrun with various zombies, skeletons, and goblins, none of which are an issue. Try as they might, they can't stop me either. What can, however, is the game crashing. I'm not sure what caused that. I kind of wondered if maybe I was stacking debuffs so high that the memory in my computer couldn't handle it, but I don't think that's why. It was probably just some, Oblivion jank. Either way, when I return, I just do nothing different and the game doesn't crash. And at the end of my venture, I find the Great Welkin Stone. Grabbing it causes the undead king to show his ugly face. Now, he could be, well, not an issue, but like a minor inconvenience. One of the things he can do is cast Spell Reflect, which procs and I immediately paralyze myself. All that did though was prolong the inevitable by like 37 seconds. I've skipped Arm Day for the past few months, so I'm not able to carry his stick out of the dungeon, but it's worth a lot, so I'm not leaving it here. Next, I return to the Arcane University where I do 2 things. The first is to part with my beloved Mage Staff of Paralysis that never saw the light of day. The second is to make a couple of new spells. The first I call Heart Stopper, 10 seconds of weakness, and 10 seconds of paralysis. The second is a targeted 1-second paralysis that has an area of effect range of 25 feet. This is meant more for crowd control than to be used offensively. And I get what ends up being the final level up of the run, so if you're curious what my attribute distributions are, here they are. I finally return the stone to Martin, who says I need a 3rd big rock, but this one is the most dangerous. You know those glowing red ores I've been yanking from hell? Yeah, that, but like should go see a doctor sized. We need a Great Sigil Stone, which can only be obtained from Great Gates like the one that opened up and blew up Kvatch. In other words, Bruma is about to have a real bad day. I speak with the Countess, who is surprisingly chill about putting her whole town in jeopardy, and having never gotten allies for Bruma, I tell her we ride at dawn. After Martin gives an epic speech, I shout, "For Frodo!" and the battle begins. Immediately, I can put my target paralysis spell to use. I needed to be careful. I didn't want to hit any of my teammates. I don't think they would aggro immediately, but I don't want them to not be able to defend themselves. After a grueling 2 minutes, which I assure you is a perfectly reasonable amount of time to last, the Great Gate opens and I step into it, ready to save the and Martin fucking died. Not how I expected this to end. Second try, I take a much more proactive approach, making sure to take down as many dragons, hot spider ladies, and edgelords as I can. This time, Martin doesn't eat it, and I begin sprinting through the plane of Oblivion, racing against the siege engine. I did almost die when I wasn't paying attention and got a guillotine dropped on my head, but also imagine how terrifying that would be. You're just standing guard, and then some intruder in robes just tanks a 2-ton axe falling on them and shrugs it off like it's nothing. I then somehow didn't grab the sigil key, but you can pick this demon door because I guess evil doors of the damned somehow adhere to the same pin system our doors do. I'll be honest, I don't even bother wasting my time on the enemies in this room, I just head straight for the stone. After the smoke clears, I notice Joffrey is still alive, a rarity honestly. Unfortunately, our boy Boris was not so lucky. What? It's not like he can use it anymore. Martin now has all of the necessary ingredients, so he channels all of his power into creating the portal. So, with all the courage I can muster, I step forward into paradise. I notice some storm atronarchs stomping around, so I avoid those, but everything else is fair game. Eventually, I run into Cathatut, who tells me the only way out of the garden is through the path he guards. I can either fight him for the key or enter into his service.
You will fail, mortal. And then where will you be? Dead and nothing.
Perhaps it's fitting that one of the first things I find in the Forbidden Grotto is a spider daedra. This is the best day of my life. After that encounter that cost me extra, I meet Eldamil, who tells me no one wearing the Bands of the Chosen, the item I picked up off Cathatet's warm body to get in here, can leave. But he can remove them, and I should trust him because despite being someone who participated in the Kvatch siege, he feels sorry for what he did. I'm not buying it. If he pulls anything funny, he'll easily get 900 gigavolts to the balls. Eldamil then tells me to keep my head down, but for some reason I decided to talk to Orth. I don't know what I expected. Just for fun, I assert dominance and obliterate all 3 Dremora guards. You know, I actually haven't tried to fight one of these things. You mean I could have killed them the whole time? Eldamil meets up with me in the next room and true to his words removes the Band of the Chosen. I wondered what would happen if I put them back on, but the game anticipated that and removed them from my inventory. Also, fun fact, whatever frost spell Eldamil has is enough to one-shot the Storm Atronarchs with my weaknesses applied. I have a feeling that this will be the one playthrough he lives the Cameron fight in. Speaking of outside Cameron's throne room, the real-life, soon-to-be crispy Ruma taunts me saying I have no grasp of the power her father has. Oh, the irony. In a matter of seconds, I atomize both her and her brother, then enter the throne room. Unfortunately, Mankar does not get one-shot. I wish he did, and I thought about loading in to try it again, but I wasn't actually sure why he didn't. A couple, and by that I mean like literally 4 things, including him, didn't get obliterated in one shot like Sarah Connor at the beginning of Terminator 2. Looking at his admittedly kind of nuts page on the wiki, he has like 4 different stacking resistances, so maybe I just didn't buff up enough, or he rolled multiple absorptions, I'm not sure honestly. Also, doesn't this just kind of scream, I'm a DM that wanted to make a tough enemy, so I mashed together 4 regular enemies' abilities? He does eat it shortly after the fight starts, and I'm glad thanks to paralysis I didn't need to worry about him healing. Also, Eldamil did live. Kinda. I return the amulet to Martin, who wears it, proving that he is indeed the heir to the throne. Together we set off for the Imperial City, but halfway through Okado proclaiming him Emperor, the city is attacked. And you know, I just realized my character questioned why talk to the High Council at all, and Martin said we should just defer to their authority because rules. If we hadn't done that, like if Martin had just gone straight to the Temple of the One, he might have lit the Dragonfires before the Oblivion Gates opened, or at the very least before Mehrunes Dagon showed up. Which is probably why the game had us do it this way, but hey. Joffrey, myself, and a handful of soldiers escort Martin to the temple, but it's too late. Mehrunes Dagon is here on the mortal plane. All hope seemed lost, but then Martin had an idea. He asked me to trust him one final time to get him to the Dragonfires, but Martin, I also have an idea. Just hold that thought for a second, okay? Martin, my man, guess what? It's all good. God of destruction, more like God of getting his shit kicked in. That'll never get old. Okay, Martin, do your sacrifice dragon thing. Hey everyone, thanks for watching this week's video. This was a lot of fun. I always love me some Oblivion, and I totally forgot about that whole stacking the debuffs thing, which made this way easier. I fully expected to have to sit there and like shock Mankar Cameron for, you know, upwards of 5, 6, 7 minutes and just chug healing potions hoping to outpace him, but that was nice. It was really nice to just obliterate things in like 1 or 2 shots, even with something so weak. This game is great. Oh, and it looks like we've got a winner. Hunter W. You are this week's Grand Champion.